Hello and welcome back to Lives Among Us. We are thrilled that this month we get to interview our very first CEO. So please help me welcome the CEO of the Plano Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Jamee Jolly. Jamee, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Good, thank you very much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Plano Chamber.
Wow. Well, gosh, we're about to celebrate 70 years here in the next few years. So it's been just really good this year. We're celebrating a high count on our membership.
Okay.
So we continue to recruit great businesses to join the chamber and get involved and give back in our community. We are staffed. We have a wonderful staff here at the chamber that works with our business community, whether it be through networking, education, our advocacy efforts. We also just recently selected our board of directors for 2014.
Okay.
So they will actually take office starting in January. So
Okay.
we'll celebrate our new board starting in January at our Plano First quarterly luncheon series. So
Perfect.
just a lot going on at the chamber, and you know, just really good members, very involved, very engaged members, which is always great when you have a membership organization.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Chamber's a very special place, and I think anybody who's involved knows that. You've been involved since when, as CEO?
As CEO, I joined the team exactly 3 years ago. In October, 1st of October, I celebrated 3 years with the chamber as
Okay.
staff. Prior to that, I was actually a member of the chamber off and on for about 8 years through
Okay.
different roles that I served, different positions.
And when you were brought on, we were just talking about, and I've experienced this, it's a fun time to be in the chamber.
Yeah.
When you were brought on, would you say it was as fun as it is right now? Were things going as well inside the chamber? And if not, maybe were you asked to kind of help bring some things up to speed a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think membership organizations overall were having to really look at themselves and say, how do we remain relevant in today's society with technology and the internet? Previously, a chamber was looked at as the place to go and become connected and get information, and just with the internet and everything that's going on in today's world, it's a different environment. And so as a membership organization, you constantly have to look for relevancy. And the chamber was kind of at a point to look at their organization. We did a 3-year strategic plan, gave us a good roadmap, if you will, and what we needed to accomplish over the next 3 years. And so I think it was a good time. It was a lot of work, a lot of long hours,
Yep.
a lot of new initiatives, really digging down deep and deciding what programs we continue to do, what types of new programs we would offer to our members,
Okay.
and just making sure that we were providing the value that we promised.
And so a 3-year strategic plan, which means that you're probably 3 years into that plan now.
We'll start year 3 in 2014, our final year.
Talk to me about, are you tracking in terms of the vision that you laid out? Are you having success in terms of executing the plan that was put together?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
It's a great plan, and we purposely divided it out into 3 different years, really looking at different perspectives: the customer perspective, which is our members,
Okay.
looking at the financial perspective, governance, how do we govern the organization to make sure that it's here for another 70 years, and just looking at those different areas, put together a roadmap. And we've had some great success. There's obviously there's few that we're still working on. Maybe we didn't meet our deadline, but we've refocused our energies, and overall I would say it's a great plan. It's helped us to create some infrastructure that will carry us through the next 10 years.
Okay.
This year, I think the biggest thing on our strategic plan in 2014 will be to file for accreditation with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
That's a very extensive process that the Chamber will go through, looking at our structure, our political involvement, looking at different ways that we offer programming, and really just providing that information in a certain format to the U.S. Chamber, and then they do an evaluation, and you can be scored anywhere from 3 to 5 stars for accreditation.
Okay. Okay.
It's exciting.
So to me, one of the things that's so special about this place is the people that are involved.
Yes.
And when I say that, I mean, there's just some truly wonderful people. But the flip side is, too, there's some extremely successful people. And people all over the world look at Plano, Texas as one of the nicest places to live. And what most people here know is the business community here is a big part of that. And what people inside the chamber know is a lot of the people responsible for that business community attribute a lot of their success to the chamber. People like Gary Hirsch, who was our first guest here.
Sure.
You're here leading that organization. These are people who, again, they attribute their success to the chamber. You're leading that. Talk to me about any pride you feel or any pride you get from that fact.
Right. Well, I think a lot of my pride comes from the fact that I have a great board of directors that they give me the direction on the plan for me to execute. So great board of directors made up of wonderful business leaders, community leaders. We also have a wonderful staff here at the chamber. I'm very proud of our staff. They work hard. It's a very demanding job, long hours, but I think they enjoy what they do and they're good at what they do. I also think our volunteer base and just the members that we have that are so quick to step up. I give the example when the fertilizer incident happened in West Texas. And we just put out a simple email that said, if you have items you want to donate, and we filled up our large conference room within hours.
Yep.
And we had people days after that bringing supplies by from across our community. And I think the pride is just helping to orchestrate those different groups to be more successful.
Right.
And if the chamber is successful, then our business community is more successful. And that's really our mission and our purpose, is to provide the resources to our members so that they can be more successful.
And so here you are today, CEO, very successful. What were you doing before you came to the chamber?
Well, prior to being here at the Plano Chamber, I was executive director of the Greater Dallas Restaurant Association.
Okay.
That is an organization that is a chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association, and it represents a 9-county region in North Texas.
Okay.
So I worked with chefs, restaurateurs, vendors that supply to restaurants, and really just helped them with a lot of the same structure as a chamber. It was an association, a trade association. So advocacy, working with them on things like smoking bans and liquor laws and different things like that. Also providing them the resources through training to be more successful in managing their business. The restaurant industry is a very tricky business.
Okay.
And so it was a great time. I was there for a couple of years and really just got a good experience working with all types of businesses, mainly small businesses.
Okay.
A lot of restaurants are family owned and operated,
Sure.
so you get to kind of see an insight, to different people and the way they live. And it's fun when the mom and the dad and the kids are all involved in the business.
Right.
So
So executive director, CEO, these are positions of leadership. Tell me a little bit just your own personal thoughts, philosophy on leadership.
I think I'm very fortunate. I consider myself somewhat young to be a CEO, and I was very privileged in the fact that my previous positions, I had mentors. I had people that provided me with opportunities to succeed, opportunities to rise to the next challenge. And I think through their leadership kind of showed me what I wanted to be in a leader. And the good thing is I've done, when I work with my staff here at the chamber, I've done most of their jobs previously, so I understand the expectations. I understand some of the challenges. I feel like I'm very engaged with my staff. When it comes to our members, I really try to understand their side of the business and their challenges. I was a former small business owner. My father had an air conditioning business that my sister and I inherited. And so I spent a few years working with the family business, and I understand the challenges of how do you meet payroll and how do you offer benefits and things like that. So I just really try to provide the leadership based on my experience and working closely with those around me just to better understand their needs.
And I don't want to speak for you, but I heard a couple consistent themes there, at least for me, one of which was empathy. Is that something you believe has allowed you to be an effective leader, is the ability to empathize with either how a small business operates or just with somebody who is in charge of that on some level, the ability to empathize with people? Is that important to you in terms of leadership?
I think it is important, especially when you talk about the chamber and the role here. We have members that are small mom and pop operations. We have the large corporations of the world with thousands of employees. So their needs are different.
Right.
And what they're looking to the chamber for is different.
Okay.
So what's important to a large corporation may not be important to a small business. So I think it helps the better I can understand their issues, their challenges. I can also provide a better service to them as a chamber.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Related to leadership, but maybe not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I know you to be, I think, somewhat of a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your life is filled with examples of being a competitor. For people who don't know you, again, clearly you've had professional positions in leadership. You were a cheerleader in college. Your first job out of at least grad school was in the sports industry. And also, something many people may not know, is that you were involved with the Miss Texas pageants growing up.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things to me speak of somebody who's a serious competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about your take on competition.
Well, I think I create my future,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've always been very focused on what I wanted in life. I've been very direct in making sure that I know what outcomes I want,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting a plan together to achieve those outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I am very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would say overachiever. But I think it's just the way I was raised. I had a father that worked very hard, and I think that just instilled certain values in me that made me more competitive, made me want to be successful, made me want to give back
Mm-hmm.
and contribute in different ways. And so I would say, as far as competition, now, granted, I'm very competitive at individual sports. I'm not a great team sports kind of person, just because I never played basketball. I was always too short. But no, I do like a good competition, and I feel like I rise to the occasion when given a challenge.
In competition, and you talked about putting a plan together and seeing it through to an objective. In competition, we can never control the outcome.
True.
And a lot of times, the outcome isn't what we would hope. Talk to me about your experiences with not coming in first place.
Sure. Well, I think, let's go back to the Miss Texas reference. So Miss Texas was an opportunity for me to compete and help pay for my college.
Okay.
And so one of the obviously the goal is to be Miss Texas. But for me, really, the goal was the scholarship. I had received an Air Force ROTC scholarship my freshman year at Baylor. Baylor wasn't a good fit for me, and the ROTC was definitely not a good fit. So I wanted to change schools, and one of the things I had to do was to find the means to pay for that. And so through the competition, was able to pay for college. Didn't win, but because I didn't win, I got to go back and compete in a different pageant, which allowed me to have more scholarship in order to finish up my undergrad degree. So I think you have to make the most of it. You're not always going to win at everything. We all have our failures, and I think you really have to take those experiences, make the most of them, and hopefully learn from them in the future. It's tough when you don't fail that often. People have higher expectations of you,
Right.
so it's very challenging when you do have something in your life that is a hiccup, if you will, or a challenge that you've not been successful at. I think it's really difficult.
But would you not engage in a competitive endeavor, whatever it is, because it might not go well?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think you compete, you do your best. I don't think I would avoid it. I think I would definitely, if there's a challenge, take it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I look
You gotta
back
be
and I
ready
think
to fail.
if I think about failing or regrets, and I look back on my life, and sometimes I'm competitive, sometimes I'm not. The only failures I ever see, the only regrets I ever have is if I wasn't brave enough to compete because I was afraid it might not go well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else I know about you. You have strong convictions about private citizens participating in civic life.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So I was raised in a household. We celebrated not our 18th birthday, but the ability to go vote.
Okay.
My father believed deeply in just anybody who's a decent citizen should go show up at the polls and cast their vote. That's the easiest way to serve your country, if you will.
Yep.
In fact, I went off to grad school one year, forgot to file for absentee voting. Dad called and said, "Did you cast your absentee?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, I completely missed the deadline, forgot about it." And the next day, FedEx showed up with a airline ticket for me to get on a plane the next morning and fly back to Dallas so that I could cast my vote. So it's just something that he believed in. He believed you needed to have a voice, and you needed to respect the fact that people had worked really hard for you to have that voice. And he was just involved in the conversation and the dialogue, and making sure that me and my sister were educated on the issues.
Yeah.
And whether we agreed with him or not, we needed to have a position, and we needed to understand that position.
Right.
So I hope more citizens, I wish more citizens would become more involved in the process. I think a lot of people are alienated by the politics of it.
Okay.
But when you really dig down and you look at the issues that are facing our country and our government, and you study them more, and you think about, how does this impact me, and how does this impact my society, and you focus on that, I think you can really engage versus just the politics of it.
And if somebody right now is sitting disillusioned, what would you say is the most powerful medicine for dealing with the fact that you feel disillusioned looking at the political stage, whether it's local or national or anywhere in between? If you sit around and feel like an outsider and feel disillusioned, what's the best answer?
Well, I think the first question is, what did you vote the last time you voted, if you voted, and are you prepared for the next vote?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a ballot coming up in November, and there are 9 constitutional amendments on there. And how much do you know about those 9? And what do they mean to you? And how do you become more educated? But it takes people, and also get involved. I mean, the Chamber has an advocacy program, but maybe your industry also has an advocacy arm, if you will, that you can become engaged in and make a difference that way. You know, it is power in numbers, but you have to take the first step as an individual to help create those numbers. So,
Right. Interesting. Somebody you referenced a couple of times, and through some private conversations, I know it's just been a very, very powerful, influential force in your life, which is your dad. You mentioned him a couple of times today here, and we would probably need hours and hours and hours to go through that in detail, and I can appreciate that. But in general, what would you say were some of the characteristics of him that impacted you so strongly, and the result being a very, very admirable, very successful young woman?
Well, thank you. My father was just a neat guy. He was a truck driver, very blue-collar, middle-income family. He worked very hard for his family. He worked for the same company about 40 years. And at some point in his career, he decided to move his family to the country because he felt like the city was not where he wanted to raise his family. So he drove back and forth from Dallas to Winsboro, Texas, where I grew up, and that was a huge sacrifice on his part. But he felt like it was important for my sister and I to have certain values and be around a certain environment. We laugh. He wanted us to be involved in things like ag and raising cows and just having that life that we would not have experienced had we stayed in the city. So I do think he sacrificed a lot. I think that taught me just his values and what was important to him. And then later in life, he was a mentor. He was a very opinionated man. And he would almost convince you. Every time, if he had a position, you had a different one. He was going to find a way to convince you. But I just enjoyed the fact that he got up every morning and went to a coffee shop and sat with his friends and his colleagues, and they talked politics, they talked about life. He had a great group of friends and a network of just people that he cared about and that cared about him. And as far as work ethic, I definitely got my dad's work ethic. He worked hard. He worked up until the day he died, and he really enjoyed work. And I think that's something that, you know, I've always looked for and been very privileged to have a career that I enjoyed. And that's something that I feel like I learned from him.
Yeah, and in case anyone thinks that's lip service, I've received emails from you that are time-stamped at around 4 a.m. So I don't know when you sleep. Yeah.
I do have a hard time with that. So.
In just a moment, I want to ask you to play Think Fast with me. And I know you've been excited about that. But before we do, I know that there's a very big, very important regional landmark that came to fruition recently that you had a lot of help putting together. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, in my previous position with the Real Estate Council, one of my responsibilities was working with the board of directors for Clyde Warren Park.
Okay.
At the time, it was known as Woodall Rogers Deck Park.
Mm-hmm.
And this was years ago, previous to the construction. This was during what we called the feasibility stage.
Okay.
So this was an opportunity. An organization came together. They said, we want to do something that will forever change the landscape of the region.
Mm-hmm.
And they chose a 5-acre deck park over Woodall Rogers Freeway.
Okay.
And so my role was just facilitating conversations and setting up meetings and helping to make sure that we stayed on track with the timeline and goals to go through a feasibility study, which means working with TxDOT and the City of Dallas and just all the different entities to see if you could even build a 5-acre deck park. It had not been done in the state of Texas. It was something unique. And so it was really a great opportunity. I worked with a wonderful team. I was just one of many that were looking at this project as something that would be a regional kind of icon, if you will.
Right.
And it was pretty exciting. A year ago, they celebrated the grand opening, and I was there with my former coworkers and got to see just what we had always talked about. We spent, 5, 6, 7 years talking about the fact that we wanted to connect uptown and downtown.
Right.
And seeing the different walks of life and the different people that were in the park that day was just phenomenal. I mean, you had rich, poor, you had people from all over coming together for one reason, and that was just to walk the park, enjoy
Right.
the children's garden, bring their dogs down to walk. And
Yep.
so it was a neat project. It was probably one of the things I'm most proud of. Just I spent a few years really working with the leaders on that project. So very neat.
Neat. From blueprint to
Yeah. Even just having the dialogue with City Council
yeah,
of,
yeah.
hey, we want to build a park. and
Right.
We're not crazy, I promise. So
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, but you're not off the hook yet.
Okay.
If you're ready,
All right.
I have 5 questions for you. We call this Think
5.
Fast.
Okay. Let's see what
Somehow-
you got here.
You almost got off the hook.
Oh, no.
All right, here are the rules.
Okay.
I read you a question. You state the first answer to pop into your mind. Are you ready?
Yes.
Question number 1. If I say leader, who comes to mind?
President Bush.
Greatest moment in sports history?
Well, that would have to be when the Florida State Seminoles won the national championship back in, I guess that was 2001.
I don't want to listen to what people on the other side of the camera are thinking right now. Favorite childhood bedtime story?
Oh, man. Gosh, that's been a while.
Mm.
A favorite childhood, we grew up in the country. I don't know that there's a specific one. I think my dad just made up a lot of stories.
My dad did the same thing.
He was creative. He didn't sit and read
Yeah.
a book. He had a tendency to make up things and tell us stories. So
Neat. Very neat. I think that's more special than a book that's read. Question number 4. You're going on vacation. You going to the beach or you going to the mountains?
the beach.
Question number 5. Who's someone you look up to?
I would have to say my father.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, he passed 3 years ago, but it's definitely he just lived a great life, was a great leader, led by example.
Well, he certainly did, and you're proof of that. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you again for tuning in. We can't wait to see you next month. Till then, take care, and thank you to our sponsors, Tetra Media.